Welcome to Fathom's Expert Series. We chat with advisors, accountants and finance leaders to learn how they're using Fathom to deliver clarity and confidence and help businesses thrive. We're talking processes, top tips and key learnings. Join us for a great conversation. Kate Douglas, welcome to the Expert Series. It's great to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Kate is a partner at Walker Wayland in New South Wales, Australia, and recently joined the Walker Wayland Australasia board as treasurer. So how's that new role turning out for you this year, Kate?
It's good. It's something a little bit different. You get to understand that board advisor role a little bit differently when you're on the board as opposed to an external advisor to the board. So yeah, it's so far so good.
Now, Kate, you lead a really busy team in a busy firm. You call yourself a tax and business advisor, and I know you're really passionate about what you call unlocking business potential. So today we're thrilled to have your time as we talk about 3 topics today. We'll look at how you structure your services. Then you're going to tell us how you position services to clients. And then probably the most interesting part of the discussion today will be how you actually deliver that work. We'll touch on how you build your team, which I know a lot of accountants will be fascinated to hear about today. And as a bonus, you're going to talk through 2 client examples, how you've turned businesses around using Fathom. And I think being able to position services to clients seems to be something that other accountants are always coming to us to talk about. Straight off the bat, can I ask you, how do you actually talk about the services that you deliver? Because the phrase business advisory can seem so polarizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can. And I know so many people that to them business advisory is a totally different thing. So what it means to me and what it means to some of my peers and colleagues and friends is a totally different beast. And then you add the layer of talking to clients who struggle enough when it comes to their tax advisory, let alone business advisory. So I try not to use it in a client context. I just think of all the advising we do as part of our job and part of the service offering that we have, and try to not make it seem like anything different or outside of our wheelhouse, if that makes sense. So I find sometimes when you start talking about new things, for some people it can be very exciting, but for other people it can be a bit challenging and a bit scary. So it's not really new for me anymore. And a lot of the time, I think a lot of us as well have been doing this sort of work for decades, but then they start to call it something new and people get a bit, oh, no, I don't need anything new. I don't need anything fancy, when actually it's just the way we do business, and it's the way we support our clients. It's the way we help them.
So at Walker Wayland, how do you structure your services? Are you delivering compliance and what we call business advisory together?
Yeah. So we don't have a separate tax compliance and business advisory team. We're all wrapped up in one kind of group. So we've got different, we call them business services teams at Walker Wayland. So we've got a bunch of different business services teams and some audit teams as well. But all the business services teams provide both tax compliance and business advisory services.
So Kate, how does Walker Wayland position services to clients and how do you engage them?
So it depends on the client, but generally speaking, we're offering additional services to existing clients. That's kind of usually the breeding ground of the initial advisory work. We do get more and more requests for proposals for totally new advisory only clients, which is always fun. The bulk of our advisory work comes off the back of our relationships with our existing clients, and it's really a matter of understanding what their needs are, being the person that they want to have the conversation with, and then being able to offer them some kind of tailored solution that can help them with whatever they're facing.
So can you step us through the engagement process? How does it logistically work?
So it'll often be the case the client will, call or will have a meeting and they'll ask a question, or will identify some kind of issue, or maybe when we're preparing the accounts, we'll see something that we say to them, oh, we really need to, talk about this, deal with this. Sometimes those are really big issues. Sometimes they're not so major at all, and it's just a one-off kind of project. So it's always a little bit different. But generally speaking, talk with the client, understand what they want, and then it's really important to not just do what they say they want, but to really understand what they need and what's going to solve the problem. Sometimes the first step is actually helping them understand what the problem is, because, we've got all those symptoms And so sometimes that first step is really digging down and working out, okay, we know what the symptoms are, we're hurting, we can feel them, but what's the actual problem? So work out what the problem is, then work out some options for solutions, and then really go to the client with some kind of proposal for either a one-off project or some ongoing review, coaching, management reporting, strategic workshops, whatever it might be. And then, really, once you're in that process with the client, things kind of morph and change over time. So we make a point of reviewing those engagements at least every 12 months, just to make sure that things haven't gone stale and that the client is still getting good value. And then also to make sure that we're actually doing what we said we would do, and to see what's next. Are we really in a position where the client can be left alone for a little while and see how they go? Do we need to go to more regular, less regular meetings? Do we need to add some more reporting? Do we have a bit of time now to, increase the level of detail that we're looking at these things in? It's really just a chance to reflect, make sure that the value proposition is still really good for the client and that we're still moving ahead and not just having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting.
And do you use Fathom for visualizations in this early phase?
Yeah, so for a lot of clients, and like I said, because every client is different, there's not a whole lot of opportunities to template things or use the same proposal document over and over again. Those opportunities are pretty small. So our view on things is, if there's an opportunity to make things streamlined and really easy, that we should definitely take it, because not only does that reduce our time and our delivery timeline for the client, but it makes it cheaper for them, which makes it more accessible. And it means that we can do more of the really fun analytical work, as opposed to spending all our time doing something that could be a repetitive task done by some kind of software. So generally speaking, when we engage with a client on an advisory basis, or even if we're trying to demonstrate to them what that value proposition is, we'll use Fathom to generate some management reporting. That's a great starting point. And we can put almost every client straight into there. Most of our clients are on Xero, so we can link them through, get the data in, get some quick insights, and demonstrate something to the clients straight away. The other thing that a lot of clients, and even though we've been talking about this for 15 years, we've got the same issue of clients now looking at their financial statements from 30 June 2024 and getting little to no value out of that reporting. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time, the first step is just to get them here, living in the here and now, and stop living in the past, so that they can see that, those day-to-day things they're doing, they really are affecting how the business is going. And just really bringing them into the current moment. So we use Fathom a lot. And there's a bunch of clients that aren't yet ready mentally for that kind of next step in terms of business coaching or those strategic discussions. We've got a lot of young businesses and a lot of startups, but we still put their information through and give them a management report every quarter or at a time period that's appropriate, because we want them to see what's going on, and we want them to start their business with the mentality of being current and understanding right now what's happening, and not becoming the sort of business owner that leaves all of that until 18 months later and then finds out they've got some problem that they need to deal with.
Yeah, so key is getting the information to Xero so you can access it and keep it live. And I guess the value proposition up front must be so critical. What's the biggest challenge with proving the value of your service to the client in this early phase?
So it's sometimes that just the fear of the unknown. Sometimes it's more of a lack of understanding. And I think a lot of my clients are really clever business people and they're experts in their field. And this is just something that is not, it's not something that they easily comprehend. So by being able to give them something that they can see and understand really changes the way they view that service offering, because you take it from an unknown to something that they want to talk about and learn about.
So Kate, it sounds like your team is giving very customized advice. So you're sitting with the client, you're unpacking that problem. It's different for every client. And then obviously the solutions that they want to pick or what they're ready for to go on that journey with your team is all going to be very different. When you're giving your client these Fathom reports to spark that conversation, are you locking them into like a 1 month engagement, or is all of that very specific for that client as well?
It's all specific for the client. So really we try and think about the client, the situation they're in, and what their big bugbears are, basically. So when we're looking at generating some kind of report for them, we set it up as a template so that we only have to do it once, but we spend a bit of time on that template and think about what's going to give them the most value. There's a lot of options when you're creating those reports, but they're not all for every client. Some people have very different drivers in their business. And one of the best ways that we found to do that is do it for yourself. Like I'm running a business, and so I jump in and I create a report for myself based on last month's results. And I think about, what do I want to see? What's important to me? And I run that for myself every month, so that I'm also constantly thinking about what's important to me here. And then if I'm running that report for myself every month and constantly seeing that little piece, I'm not really looking at that, then I look at that more critically the next time I look at another client's report. The other thing that has been a good way to help us shape that reporting is we don't always go through it in a meeting. Sometimes we'll just send it through and say, hey, we've generated this report for you, thinking it might, give you a bit of insight. Have a look and come back to me with any questions. So then you see those return questions from the client. You see that's what they were looking at. That's what they were focused on. So it gives you a bit more insight. So I'll often do that with a newer client because I don't have as strong a relationship with them. I'm not as familiar with their day-to-day and what's keeping them up at night. So you start to learn the little things that they're really focused on, and then you can tailor it kind of from there. It's always very open to what the client needs, what suits them. We've got startup clients who really, cash flow is just all they're thinking about. So the idea of adding another service on that's going to cost a whole heap of money is, you would be crazy to offer them that, because that that's just going to cause more stress to the growth that they're looking for. So you make sure that whatever you offer to the client is going to suit them and suit the business as well. It has to balance out from a cost point of view. But I've found there's usually a way that we can both be satisfied in that regard and still add value and provide more insights than tax return at the end of the year.
And I imagine cash flow and profitability in a report must be still a vital piece for most clients, understanding the difference.
Yeah, because it's the classic question that we always get asked of, why am I paying tax? There's no money in my bank account. And so really being able to build a bridge between the tax bill and the bank account, it's a pretty strong thing to have in your tool belt, really. If you can explain to a client how we've gotten from A to B and give them something that they can look at and see and tick off and go, oh yeah, that's right. It gives you credibility, a bit of trust, and it helps clients see that we're not working for the tax man. We're not here just to get your tax dollars, but we're here to help you understand that if you do X, Y, Z, that's going to result in whatever it may be.
Here's a good question for you, Kate. What's a top tip you give your team when they're in that engagement process for really being able to listen and respond to the client in the room?
So the big one that I try to get the guys to focus on when they're meeting with a client or trying to get information from a client is to not focus on themselves. So got, the team, they're training and they find one-on-one meetings quite nerve-wracking, but try and get them to focus on what the client is feeling instead of what they're feeling. So instead of your internal monologue being, oh my gosh, what if they ask me a question I can't answer? Maybe I look a bit silly. Oh, I shouldn't have worn this outfit, whatever it might be. Get them to focus on, this client is running a business. They work 100 hours a week. They've taken an hour and a half out of their day to come into our office and sit and talk to us. They are sitting there thinking, this better not be a waste of my time. Or, oh my God, what if they tell me some horrible news like I've got a $200,000 tax bill that I can't afford? Or, what if they can't help me? What if they're not able to answer my questions and solve my problems? You think about what they're thinking about rather than how you're feeling. And it can really shift your listening, your perspective, and your ability to engage with them in the room in that moment. And I also find, when you sit across the table from someone, you can often see how they're feeling. You can see how they react to things. But if you're so busy worrying about what you're thinking and feeling, you might miss it. So I really encourage the team to think about the client. And it seems really obvious, but it's not actually. It's quite a manual thing you have to do to tell yourself to think about what they are thinking about, not let yourself get carried away with your own internal thoughts and fears.
It's a great tip because the client advisor relationship is not just a transaction, is it? When you think about finance, it is so emotional. And for many of us who aren't trained in finances, it's a whole nother world. There's fear of the unknown. I mentioned that already. So yeah, it's great to take the client on, even just on the basic journey. I think we sort of underestimate what everyone knows. So I guess you start from the beginning.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You know, I'm relatively young in this industry and a lot of my team are also. And you can get that fear of, oh, you know, they don't think I know as much, but you're still the expert in the room at the time. You know, you're still the person that's trained in this service, whatever it is. You're still the person that's studied for, you know, a decade and does their ongoing CPD and talks to clients all day about these sorts of issues. You're still the person that's got a better breadth of knowledge about a lot of the financial issues that they're facing. So even though, okay, you know, would never proclaim to be the best or know everything, you still in that moment know a lot more than they know. So you have to remember that, you know, you're there to find information, solve problems, ask questions. You're not there to be quizzed and caught out. They really want what you're offering. Otherwise, they wouldn't have turned up. So,
yeah, and the opportunity just to build the client's knowledge would be a big part of that trust relationship, wouldn't it?
That's right. You want people who can build their business skill set because they become a better business person. They grow, they go through more exciting things, and you're part of that journey. So that's the whole idea, I think, of the business advisory world in my mind.
So Kate, moving on then to how you are delivering that work with your team, tell us about how you skill up a team. And I know you've set yourself up as the Fathom champion in your team. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Basically, when we recruit, we're only looking for people that have some kind of interest in not just tax compliance, but advisory and business more generally. So that's the starting point. And then as the team move through, they do quite a bit of advisory training just to help them have that understanding and skill set. And then when we actually get to the point of them delivering services, obviously there's a lot of training and a lot of shadowing in meetings and kind of being part of that understanding of what's taking place. But we also get the team involved from a really junior level in terms of preparing some of the analytical reporting and things like that, because it is something that they can understand and it's something that can really build the foundations of that advisory mindset. Yeah, so that's the base level of how we get the team to be on that pathway, because they've really got to want it and they've got to want to be in that room and having those conversations, because it's quite different from your typical accountant. It's a very client-facing role, which is, again, quite different from your typical young accountant. A lot of them don't want to have that kind of interaction and they don't have that confidence yet. So we get the team to present different trainings around the firm. We get them to be part of different groups in our Walker Wayland Association. We get them as many opportunities as we can to stand up and talk in front of people and to build that presentation skill, so that when they're in front of a client, it's not brand new in terms of presenting reports, strategy, and things like that. And ultimately, they're always supported by the partner. We're very rarely sending a junior team member off to have some kind of strategic meeting, or probably never, I could say. But it's really good to have them involved and let them be part of it.
So who are you looking for when you're recruiting? Is there a certain personality or a mindset that helps with getting into this advisory work?
So generally speaking, really we're looking for curiosity. If someone's interested in how business works and why things are done the way they are, then I think we can do a lot with that. But if someone doesn't possess that kind of natural urge to dig a little deeper and really work it out, then that, I guess, if they're not a natural problem solver, I find it a bit more challenging to get them engaged in that advisory space.
So Kate, as part of your engagement process, you have these regular check-in meetings. How often do you structure those and what resources are your advisors taking to those meetings?
So not to sound like a broken record, but it's different for every client. So generally it would be quarterly or sometimes monthly. I've got some clients that we check in weekly because they're going through, a bit of a moment and they need the extra support. But the ideal for me is quarterly. But like I said, if a client needs a bit more regular contact and accountability and things like that, then we're more than happy to set that up as well. In terms of the resources, Again, it really depends on the client. Up front, what we like to do is set up a plan of how we expect the program to run. Sometimes that plan will be really, really detailed. Other times it will be quite high level. And that's for those clients that are a bit more mature in their business and we're only checking in with them quarterly. Obviously, they're kind of left to move through those action items on their own a little bit more. But generally speaking, we're setting up a plan and trying to work to that if it makes sense. I really live by the philosophy of planning is priceless and plans are useless. So we try not to, it's not the Bible. We're not living and breathing this plan, but we're using it as a guide for the decisions we made at the beginning with the client and making sure that those outcomes, if they're still relevant, are achieved over time.
And is a monthly or quarterly budget key for you tracking those outcomes with your client?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, a budget is really, really important. I find sometimes clients just hate budgets. It's a scary word. They don't want to be part of it. And they don't like you if you're the person banging on their door talking about the budget every month or every week or whatever it is. I try to use different terminology, especially if I know it's the type of client that's not going to react well to that sort of word.
For budget then?
Well, so we set targets and we look at ways that we can be more lean and focus on, little like wins and things like that. And I'm not trying to baby clients and trick them or anything like that, but you've got to be mindful of what they'll respond well to and what they won't respond well to. And if you know that the word budget is just going to totally lose them, then there's just no point. You're just wasting everyone's time. So I always do a budget in the background and, you gather as much information as you can and you put one together. Some clients you can present that to and we can definitely look at the budget and talk to it. Other clients, from that budget, we set targets and KPIs that are actually budget-driven KPIs, and we focus on that KPI instead to achieve the same outcome.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're using customizable KPIs in your reporting and you're training your advisors on which KPIs to use for each client?
So generally speaking, we'll have a little bit of a brainstorming session and talk about, what's more relevant, what will give us the most relevant result in terms of KPIs, because it's one of those things, there's so many to choose from and there's so many options in terms of setting up your customizable ones. You don't want 1,000, you probably want 3, maybe 5. And so it's important to hit the right points and look at the right drivers when you're setting those up. I've got an absolute whiz in my team and it doesn't matter what you ask her to do, she can work it out. And so it's nice to have a balance in the team of the technical people who can deliver it for you and the more, thinking kind of people who can come up with the ideas. So we kind of try and get into a room together and work out not just what's the best idea, but how do we actually present that in the Fathom report and what will give it the best impact for the client.
That's fantastic. So I'm getting this word customizable is coming through loud and clear, broken record, as you say.
Yeah, sorry.
So customize your service offering to each client. How are you pricing what you're delivering?
So look, it really depends, again, on the client. I guess, what is it? So the 3 principles of pricing are the cost, the market, and then what the client can afford. I try not to focus on the market because generally speaking, our clients aren't coming to us for a cost reason. They're coming to us because of the relationship we have and because they know we're wanting to help them with their business. So I try not to kind of focus on what other people are charging, although it is always a good reference, to understand what's out there in the market. I try not to let it influence me too much. So of course, we're accountants, we can't help it, charge out rate times number of hours that we think this will take. So we work out what our costs will be. And then we look at what the client can afford. And there's really no one better positioned than us to work out what they can afford because we're sitting there with all of their financial data and the skill set. So we really want to make sure that when we position our price, we're not freaking them out and scaring them away, because all that trust that you gain can be lost so quickly. And the last thing we want to do is kind of go in really heavy and, lose people's interest and lose their enthusiasm to work on this side of their business. So we always try and price it in a way that is palatable to them and that cost is going to demonstrate some kind of value or outcome. So it's always, it will cost you this much and for that much money, you'll get X, Y, Z. I'm also trying at the moment to offer options in terms of the service offering. So rather than just saying, here it is, this is how much it'll cost, you can do this, you can do A, which will cost this much. You could also do B, which will cost this much, and you give people some options. So you can let them choose. Maybe to start with, they'll just go with a more simple kind of program to get them started. And then later on, they might add on something with a bit more detail, or maybe they'll go for the whole lot up front, but it's nice to give them the choice. And it also helps them really understand the costs, because I think lots of people will say things like, oh, can you do all my bookkeeping? It doesn't cost much. It's really cheap, my bookkeeping. It's super easy. But really, they don't understand how much it costs or how much work is involved. So when you lay it out for them and you help them see this is how much the bookkeeping is costing, if you want that to come down, there's all these things we could do and there's different ways you could be involved. But it's important for them to see that, of all this money you're paying, it's broken up into these different sections. What's going to add the most value to you? Let's focus on that. What's something that isn't necessarily super exciting for you and you could be using one of your in-house team members to work on? So we always try and really make sure we're doing the work that we need to be doing, and where it's possible, the client is taking on that internal business administration where it's appropriate.
Yeah, and bookkeeping, it's a great example because it's the foundation, isn't it? Good data in, good data out. Yeah. What's the biggest challenge for setting a good foundation of data for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, it is exactly that. It's helping them understand that, garbage in, garbage out. And really, once they have to go through and do it for themselves, they have often a really big moment of realization that, wow, I really haven't been doing a good job of this, or I haven't been providing the right information. But I think something else that's really important is once you demonstrate to them what good base information can do, they get kind of excited about it. So, Kate, I love these reports, or wow, I'm really interested in this document you've given me with my revenue over time from my business's entire existence. I'm really interested in this cash flow chart and how that's working. And you explain to them that, well, I was able to do that because I had all your information and all of your transactions are up to date. The reason historically that it hasn't happened is because we haven't had the data. I think a lot of the times to us it seems really simple because it's what we do every day. But to a busy client who's focused on their family and their business and their side hustle and the bank who are calling them every 20 minutes for documents and they're not connecting those dots because they don't have the mental capacity to think about it. So just need to provide them that little bridge so that they can really understand we're not just bugging you for bookkeeping because we're annoying accountants. We're bugging you for the bookkeeping so that we can help you achieve your goals and meet your growth targets and really see right now what's affecting the business.
Let's talk about your project work. What sort of projects do you guys take on and how do you quote those stages of work?
So we get a nice variety of different projects, which is always fun. So sometimes it'll be a total overhaul of an internal accounting system, or sometimes it'll be kind of more software based. A recent one we had was a total overhaul of the management reporting system and the board reporting for a client. And they're always a lot of fun, those kind of bigger, meatier jobs. So what we try and do with those is instead of quoting one cost for the total project, we break the project down into stages and we quote, usually we'll only quote for the first stage. We might give an indicative price for the following stages, however many there are. From projects gone by, understand that once you get that step one done, you'll know so much more about the client and you'll understand a lot better what stage 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will actually look like. So once stage 1 is complete, you're in a position then to properly quote those following stages of the project. We've had projects previously where we did stage 1 and then we all agreed that 2 was no longer necessary. Let's skip that and move straight on to stage 3. So in doing that, I felt really good about the fact that I hadn't gone through and created some enormous detailed quote for stage 2 because it would have just been rubbish. So I found clients appreciate that. We try and put, where it's possible, put in timeframes. So stage 1 will consist of, A through to Z, and it's going to cost this much. And our time frame, as long as we get all the information, will be 3 weeks. And then in 3 weeks' time, we'll have that stage 1 delivery meeting. We'll go through it all. And then at that time, we'll be able to put timeframes in place for stage 2 and give you more detailed guidance around what those will look like. So you really need to give yourself the opportunity to get in there and understand a lot more about what's to come before you jump the gun and try and provide a lot of detail around something that you actually don't understand all that well.
It's a really clever way to do it because it allows you to iterate, obviously. You're finding out all this information. You actually get to deliver something that everyone's happy with. And then where do you go from there? Yeah, it's a really clever way to do it.
Yeah. So we found it's really nice too because it allows you to engage with the client along the way a lot more, and it really keeps them part of the project. They're really sitting on top, making sure it's all going ahead, but they don't have to be in there answering all your questions all the time because you've been gathering the information throughout the first stage to be prepared for the second stage or however it may work.
That is really fascinating. I'm going to use that approach in a project I'm about to do. I think that's excellent. I love that. I like this idea that you've got all this base knowledge, but then it lets you be agile. You can sort of shift the next few phases.
Yeah. I've got my favorite movie. There's this line constantly, the whole movie, they're saying, vous adapt, which means, we adapt. And I always think of it. It's like, vous adapt, like whatever it happens, we'll be ready. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I love it. It's so good. So I love this part of our interview, Kate. You're going to talk us through 2 clients who asked for something and didn't get what they asked for, but got something better in this journey that you took them on. So we'll start with the first client. Can you describe the outcomes you achieved for them, how you use Fathom, and what problem you're solving?
Sure. So this client is quite a big service business, and they had 5 offices around Australia, and they had 4 internal accountants as well. And they were having an issue where their internal monthly reporting was taking 23 days to be completed after month end. So they had asked for ongoing strategic advice and coaching. So we had monthly meetings set up. So the way we actually delivered it was that my business partner was doing the meetings with the board of directors, and I was having a monthly meeting with the internal accountants so that we would get both sides of the way that business was functioning. So what we found is that the monthly meeting would always occur before the reporting was ready. So they were never looking at timely reporting. So what we ended up doing was taking the manual report that they were preparing every month between these 4 accountants and automating that.
Excel or something?
In Excel, yeah, in a very, very chunky Excel document. And we ended up automating that through Fathom. And it was a really interesting process because the initial request was, I want the reporting to be identical. So whatever you choose, I need the exact information that is in my current consolidated Excel document. And now what we ended up giving them was this incredibly simplified version of their consolidated accounts because they had multiple entities around Australia. So we ended up really, really simplifying the reporting and taking out quite a lot of not just the information, but the work behind that information. And the reason was because I had my partner in the strategic meetings, he knew the conversations they were having and the information they needed. So it was a really challenging project. It was really great. And those monthly meetings are still being held and run by my partner. I'm no longer involved in the ongoing reporting because it's something that we set up, we helped them build, and we handed over to their internal accounting team. So it meant that I was better placed to tailor the reports to their conversations that they were having and the help that they needed. So we really simplified the reporting, and it took a lot of convincing to get to a point where they were happy with a cut down version that could be templated and automated through Fathom. But in the end, those reports ended up being far more valuable because they were ready in 7 days after month end. As soon as all the intercompany transactions were put through, the report was run. They were always ready before the management meetings. And it meant that information was being talked about each month in time, rather than all of this work going into a set of reports that was rarely looked at, to be honest with you. And now we're just here for, it's great. It's kind of the ideal situation. And so it was also a really great project in terms of getting the team involved in creating those reports and understanding what's really important and what the consolidated report will give you and what an individual account report will give you, and really getting to understand the nitty-gritty of how Fathom works. And in that process, we actually compared 4 different reporting tools and landed on Fathom, really from a ease of connectivity, ease of use and presentation point of view. And it's been really good. And that was 2 years ago, and those reports are still used in an ongoing basis. So it's nice to see that something that we were able to set up could add value over time to a really great business.
And how interesting that simplicity was the key. So they obviously had so much extraneous information that, what was it doing? Distracting them, Kate, or what was the problem?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure, because they were quite a large business. I think things get added on over time as they acquire new arms of the business and new directors come on board. Everybody wants their specific thing that's important to them. So these reports kind of just got a bit out of hand. There was also a bit of reluctance from the internal accountants because that was taking up 23 days of their month. So if I took it down to 7 days, what are they going to do with the other 2 weeks? And there was this, you could sense the fear of one of us being made redundant, what's happening here. So we had to go through the process of explaining there's so much work to do here. There's so much more exciting work that could be done. There's lots of projects that you guys haven't been able to get around to. No one's going anywhere. The team will stay intact the way it is, but you will get 2 weeks of your month back to do lots of other important work that, will be more fun and help the business on its growth journey, as opposed to preparing reports that aren't really used. So like I said, there were challenges, but we got there in the end.
And manual consolidated reporting is an absolute nightmare on the accuracy front. So even just knowing that everything is accurate in Fathom because it's live data, you're not double handling it all the time. That must have been a bit of a game changer straight up.
Oh, it was amazing. And there was a month where one of the internal accountants was away, so we jumped in to prepare the report for them. And the hard coding of data into this document was just unbearable, just in this day and age. Why would we be doing this? It didn't make any sense.
And so now that you've set up that report, it's a template that they can tweak and customize, isn't it? So they can change it as they need and it can grow over time.
Yeah, that's right. And we set up a few custom KPIs at the time. And since then, the functionality in Fathom has actually made those custom KPIs unnecessary around some of the debtors reporting. So it's been nice to see the evolution.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's an amazing project that you did for that client, Kate. You were saying earlier that you actually only took them to 0 maybe the year before. Was that right?
Yeah, I think it was about that. So lots of big wins.
Well, moving on to your second client story, tell us about client number 2, which is a client who was looking to sell one business and then purchase or grow another one.
Yeah, so this client had been growing a great business and had some potential buyers out there. So for the first potential buyer, we created this manual sales pack that the buyer had asked for. And then that one fell through. And then a few months later, another buyer popped up. So everything in that pack had to be replicated and updated. And then all of a sudden, we finally realized that we could have automated it in Fathom. So we actually set up a template for the sale of that business in Fathom, so that every time a buyer popped up, we could rerun the report to the most recently reconciled period and provide them really up-to-date figures really quickly. Because what we noticed was when a buyer says, oh, hey, can I get your most recent quarter accounts? If they're not ready and they find something else in the meantime, you could lose them just based on the timeliness of the reporting. So we were really focused on having something that would be more or less ready to go when a buyer emerged. So that was one part of it that was really, really cool and really great for the client, who ultimately sold that business, which was very exciting. And then the other part of it was, at the same time, they had started another business on the side, which is why they were selling the first business. So they just wanted to focus on their new business, and they were looking at ways to grow and develop it. So for a little while, we were doing some consolidated reporting because they were still running both businesses. So that was to really help them with their cash flow and understanding of, the development costs in the new business. But then we were helping them look at things, particularly around their pricing and ways they could achieve their revenue targets. So they had set themselves some pretty aggressive revenue targets, which was good to see. And we were really trying to help them understand that it's not just, $300,000 a month. It is however many products times the price to get to that number. So we had a really good session with them where we used the goal seek. Yeah. Sorry. So we used that tool in a live meeting with them and showed them that a 2% price increase on the same volume of sales that they already had would get them to their target. So it was very exciting for the client in the moment. You could see the relief, I think. And I don't think they ended up going for the full 2%. I think they only went for a 1% increase and then still got the additional volume. But it was a really important thing, I think, for them to see, because they were so conscious of the age of their business and the fact that they didn't want to go in too aggressively with a price increase. But they were really motivated to hit these targets. So it was really nice to show them that they didn't have to be so aggressive on a pricing point of view to get to where they wanted to be in that revenue space.
That is the power of Goal Seek, isn't it? To model out scenarios and tweak and play with the various levers. So a price hike is pretty massive, isn't it, for a business owner?
Yeah, that's right.
Model out volume as a different lever would have been fantastic, because you can talk about revenue increase, but what does that tangibly mean for the business owner day to day? That's the connection, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's one of those things, when you boil down how it works, profit is revenue minus expenses. So there's not all that many levers that a new business that doesn't have a premises or anything like that can really pull. So in this business's case, the lever they had was revenue. That was it. That's how the profit was going to be improved. So to make it less scary and to break it down and demonstrate that with a very small adjustment, they could achieve a much bigger result over the course of 12 months. It was very cool.
That's amazing. And do you now use Goal Seek a bit more in front of clients? Have you found that useful going forward?
Look, it depends. We often use it just for ourselves to make sure we're understanding really where the levers are in the business. For some clients, it's all a bit too overwhelming. So we tend to just see what will suit at the time. But if there's a client who is in that frame of mind and ready to see and problem solve with you, it's a great thing to show them.
There's so many key themes coming throughout our interview today. It's that very customizable approach to the client. Also being sensitive of what the client's up for. I'm hearing that it's baby steps to start with. You do have to start slow with clients. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, it's all about the relationship that you have with them. So you'll know if there's someone who's ready to take a great big leap, or if there's someone who needs, to take it a little piece at a time. And sometimes our role is to push them and say to them, okay, it's time to take a bigger step now, because if you stay here taking these little steps, this is what will eventuate. And other times we need to say, like, whoa, that step's too big. Bring it in, like, let's take a breath and reset a little bit. So it's all about, you've got to match their pace to some degree, but you also are the advisor and you're the person that they're looking to for guidance. So you need to remember that if that pace is out of step and it's not going to get them to where they want to get to, that it's your job to explain that to them and help them get on the right level. Yeah. Kate,
it's obvious that you are so passionate about clients and serving clients. It comes through loud and clear. 2 questions about Fathom for you. From a client perspective, what's one of your favourite features in Fathom?
I really like the Goal Seek. Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. I love being able to template things. I love that you can create a template that goes across all your clients if you want to use it again. And I love that you can customize things and that it looks nice, because so many of the time you look at these reports and they've got the information, but they're just horrible to read. So it's nice to be able to present something that looks good without having to sit there in Canva and adjust colors and things like that. So,
yeah, and I imagine if it looks professional, it makes your team look really professional as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very true.
Then from the advisor's side, what's a big game changer for your team in Fathom?
Look, it's probably not too dissimilar of an answer. Being able to connect a client's file from zero, download it into a report and have a look with, in 15, 20 minutes, that's really very cool. So that speed at which you can generate something is great. And it's something that is so easy now that there's no excuse not to do it if you've got the information. It's nice just to be able to show team members, look what we can do. Look at this. Here you go. Da, da, da. Now look at that compared to the BAS that you've just generated. That document that's getting lodged with the ATO means nothing to your client, but look at the report. Look at what they would be able to see if you gave them that. And think of the conversation that you'd be able to have with them if that's what you were talking to, rather than, 3 numbers on a page that's going to cost them $8,000.
Kate, I've loved talking to you today. Again, I love hearing about how customized your services are, and you are so passionate about your clients. There's a question that we ask every advisor on the Expert series, and it's this one. What's something that accountants aren't talking about enough that they should be talking about more?
There's so many things, but right now I would say technology is still probably the biggest one. I think a lot of accountants, we all do it. I catch myself doing it. We fall into this manual way of doing things because it feels good to, write something down and do it yourself and build it. We love building things and creating things, but I have to constantly remind myself that that's not adding value to anyone. People don't want to pay for that. You do that on your own time, and you need to really utilize the technology that's available to you, because I think everybody has the same capacity struggle at the moment. Recruitment is harder and the industry is less lucrative. There's fewer people coming through. So if there's technology there that will make your life easier and enable you to present something better to your client, you really need to be talking about it and thinking about it. I think it is really, really important.
A question to close out the interview is this one. If you were starting out your career again, Kate, what would you say to your younger self?
Smile more, talk less. I say that to myself all the time.
Explaining.
Just got to listen to what's happening. There's so much to be learnt. There's so much to be gained from hearing what people have to say and really taking it in. And I think when I was really young and excited, I just wanted to do everything. And there were lots of opportunities where listening would have paid off big time.
That's fantastic advice. So looking towards the year, what are you most excited about at Walker Wayland this year?
We've got some great new clients coming on board. Our team structure is changing a little bit in a really positive way. And I feel like 25 is just a little bit fresher than 24. So I'm looking forward to doing some things a bit differently and taking a bit more time to map out where we're going.
So much for your time today, Kate. We really appreciate it. And thank you for generously sharing all your insights today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Find out how other advisors fathom it for clarity and confidence.